If you have said to yourself, I should write that, or if someone has said to you, you should write that, then I'm talking to you because you need to write. And that's why you're tuned in to yWrite. Hi, welcome to yWrite. I am your host, Angela Grout, and I'm in studio today with more great information to share with you about books to read and how to write your story. I am in studio today with a gentleman named Kyle Palazzi, and he is from East Long Meadow. He's a high school English teacher, and he is the author of several novels, which are dramatic stories with a twist of spookiness. So this is going to be fun to talk about. Some have said his stories are like tales from the crypt. His fiction and poetry have appeared in the Alden Street Review, in literary journals, one of the literary journals called Persona. So if you're a writer and you're submitting, you're going to learn a little bit about these literary journals. And also I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but Emperor Literary Magazine. His novels, All We Have to Fear is... I'm excited to talk about this one for sure. He has a novel called All We Have to Fear, and it is a bleak, honest, and dark, funny exploration of marriage and parenthood and, the weight of unresolved trauma. What do you think? So many people are writing about their traumas, and this is a fictional story. So we're going to talk to him about that and his debut novel, which tackles weight loss magic pills. So I want to welcome into the studio Kyle Palazzi.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Welcome. You're on summer break now from teaching.
Yeah, yesterday was the last day of school, so yeah.
Nice.
Working through the summer. So.
Nice. And how long have you been teaching?
10 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you're liking to be around high school children.
I love it. Yeah,
Good.
There's nothing else I'd rather be doing. So I taught middle school for about 5 years, and you can't pay me enough to go back to middle school.
No.
High school's where it's at.
I did CCD programs for middle school, and I always said I'm not doing
rough.
sixth grade.
Yeah.
That's a rough hormonal age.
Yeah.
No, not for me. But high school is good.
Yeah.
Have your students read your books?
So one student has. Okay. He actually read the first version of the novella, and then another student, because one of my honors classes, I give like a reading assignment to, and one of my students was joking, "Oh, can I read your book?" I was like, "Sure,
awesome.
If you buy it, yeah."
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
But no, none of my students have read it before, but some of my colleagues have.
Yeah, of course.
And the response has been pretty positive. So,
well, congratulations. Yeah. I mean, you've got two books.
Thank you. Yeah.
And you've done them 1 year and then the next year. I mean,
I cheated a little bit,
years.
but because the novella, actually, when we get to that, I can kind of tell you about how that came about. But I've had the manuscript for All We Have to Fear sitting in a file for 10 years, something like that. So
I just found a manuscript on my computer that was written in 2016, and it's 9,900 words, and I'm like, what is this?
Started something that was going to be great.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm like, I printed it, so I have to read it and see if it's something really great. Mm-hmm. All right, so your debut novel came out last year.
Yes. August 2025.
Okay.
Yep.
And again, I'm going to go right into that because it's very cool. It's a story about a girl who's taking a weight loss magic pill.
Yeah.
And
it's injection. Yeah.
So relative to what's going on. Like right now, people are doing this, and then they're getting these like weird symptoms, and and some of them are dropping a ton of weight, some of them aren't.
Yeah.
How did you come up with this idea, which you're doing before it's like a fad? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it actually started off as a short story that I wrote in 2014, 2015. And it was, at the time, I was back in my undergrad program because I had a little trouble figuring things out in my life.
Like to teach and learn.
Yeah, and I wanted to do kind of a career change toward my late 20s, early 30s, and wrote the short story, and I essentially wrote it for the Alden Street Review, which was Springfield College's lit mag.
Okay, yeah. So we're going to jump right into that, too.
Because
you submit for different literary magazines.
Yeah, you can, yeah. And,
so you wrote a short story about a weight loss drug.
Yep. And actually the version that appears in the journal itself is actually not even the whole thing. I had to cut down because there was a limit of like 1,000 or 1,500.
Yeah, that's
words.
always fun when you do submit to literary journals or anywhere you have that like specific word count, which I do find challenging. I've done some contests where you have to do flash fiction in 100 words.
Yeah, it's like nearly impossible, but it's not improbable, that sort of thing. But so I submitted it, and I was on the e-board, so it was. I wouldn't say that that's the reason why I got accepted, but I was accepted, published, and whatever, and 10 years passes, and literally January 1st, 2025 happens, and I'm the current project that I'm working on. I was, I was a little stuck, and I was just like, you know what? I need to feel some sense of accomplishment, and I need to finish something. Yeah. So I'm gonna try. I'm just gonna kind of pivot, do this thing, and then go back to.
Sometimes you can. I find like I can start a project, start a novel. Like I have a book I'm working on now, and I started it a while ago, but these called first. It's like, wait, you got to finish me, and it's like, no, I'm in this, and it's like, no, you got to do it in the order that they tell you to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So you had to go back to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And I, because I knew that there was more to it, and I knew that it didn't end the way that I wanted it to. So I said, you know what, I'll take the journal, start typing, kind of where I started and left off. And however long it's going to be is however long it's going to be. If it's a novel, great. If it's a short story, another short story, great.
A lot of people like the short story novellas. Yeah. I mean, this is,
that was about 15,000 words, so it's like 60 some odd pages.
Yeah, you can read it in sometimes
you can read it in like an hour, you know what I mean? Yeah.
One sitting.
So, and that took me about 2 weeks to write the first rough draft. And again, like my only goal when I ever start something is to finish. Like that's just whether it sees the light of day or not is kind of immaterial. So
okay, so how do you think about this weight loss magic drug?
What do I think about it? I don't know. I am I'm a bit of a pessimist. Okay. So I always kind of hope for the best, expect the worst type of thing.
Yeah.
And I think with a lot of the stories that we're hearing and just even like people who have found success, like you can tell by looking at somebody.
Oh, that Ozempic
have had help, and it's not that people do need help because it is difficult, especially for women. You know what I mean? And that's also one of the things that I kind of wanted to explore too. And you might be able to, because obviously I'm a man.
Well,
so
you have
I
the woman
no
character, so
yes,
and women do go through. I feel like a lot more bodily changes than men. I mean, because we have between going through menstruation and
perimenopause,
all of that. But then it's like you get pregnant, you're gaining weight, you're losing weight. Yeah. And it's like our bodies just adjusted. Of course, I was told that the woman's body was meant to store fat.
Yes.
So I want to know
biologically,
where I can sell it. Where can I make the money? I've been
been
hoarding it.
You do like Fight Club and just make soap. You know what I mean?
Oh,
sort of thing,
okay.
So, but yeah, I really wanted to, because I totally disavow the notion that you shouldn't write about certain things just because of who you are. Like I'm a white man, like I shouldn't write about women, or I shouldn't write about
women's weight issues. Yeah.
Women's weight issues. I disagree 1,000%.
You did it.
Because that doesn't. We're all individuals, and I think when you get down to it, we all know what it feels like to be unhappy with ourselves in one way or another.
And your character, so she goes to see this doctor, and she gets what is it called?
It's called Barbadol.
Barbadol. I was thinking like the shaving cream,
Yeah.
Barbadol. And
Barbasol. Yeah.
Yeah. And you created the drug.
Yeah. And this was before the Wegovy craze and all that. Yeah.
And it's interesting, so as a writer, when you're trying to create something, because you don't want to use the real name of a drug.
Not.
When I did April Rain, I had one version where she took a Plan B pill.
Okay.
And her friend gave it to her, and she said, "Here, take this. It's called a Moxie."
Oh my God.
Well, then I realized, well, no, I can't call it a Moxie. I mean, then you have to do that like thing, and I ended up taking that out. But it's just interesting because you got to make sure that when you're writing fiction, you're not using something that can cause you harm later. Someone's like, you can't use that. You don't have the rights to it.
Yeah, exactly. And that was kind of the difficult part, but and I was also kind of worried about it being a little too ham-fisted, you know what I mean? Because it sounds like Barbie doll, which is what I wanted to go for.
No, I love that. That's great.
But it was honestly a lot of fun to write, and it was good to kind of get it out there, and the response on that has been been really.
Did you have to do
too.
a lot of research on like weight loss drugs or anything like that to find the symptoms, or did you know someone, or did you have experience?
So I for a very short while I worked as a personal trainer. So and I enjoy going to the gym, and I consume a lot of like fitness content and things like that. So I feel like the research was already sort of there. Plus I knew people in my life who have been on various weight loss drugs and have seen some really positive things happen. But like I said, I'm always a bit of a pessimist, and I think that like I like to dial things up to 11. You know what I mean? Like it's like I like to, especially in my fiction and things like that. I like to just take it to the utmost extreme and kind of see how far I can sort of take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so and again, your first novel, you've narrowed in on like kind of one topic.
Yeah.
And I mean, I did the same thing. My first novel is An Angel's Journey, so it's it's the afterlife journey of one person.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, we tackle this big fiction, and we go,
yeah.
what did we get ourselves into?
Yeah.
But boy, in all that we have to fear, you have created characters that are like, I want to use the word intense, but I don't want that to be scary. Like they have such great backstories.
Yeah.
And so as a writer, and for the writers out there, I'm going to ask this question: like, when you're creating the story, because some people will sit down and just the pen flows and the story's coming out. Maybe that's happened. But because you have such backstories with these characters, what's your relationship with them? Do you create them before the story, during? How does it evolve?
Well, usually it starts off like, if you're asking like about what my process is.
Yeah.
It usually starts off as like an idea, or like I like to speculate, like what if this particular person was in this sort of situation, what would happen? What is the worst possible thing that could happen to this person? And what do they have the most to lose? And I sort of start there. And I think you asked like how much of me is in these characters. Probably more than I would like to admit. You don't
have to point it out. But
no, of course not. Yeah, but it's definitely King was right when he said that fiction is the truth and the lie. You know what I mean? It's every fictional character and story comes from someplace that is lived.
Yeah.
And I mean I feel like a piece of me is in every part of the characters.
Well, Margaret Atwood, she did The Handmaid's Tale and stuff. Someone had interviewed her, and they said, does this come from, you, your life? And she goes, and I love this because I say this about my books. Everything in my books have happened in life, maybe just not in my life.
Yeah, there you go.
And
that's
it's
a good
like
way to look at it.
We experience things even if we don't do it. Individually, you can read the newspaper and you've experienced, the issue that the car accident that happened down the street or something.
Yeah.
And now when we have a creative mind, we can
run with it. Yeah, your imagination runs wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you have Denny, Dora, Shannon. I mean, all of their characters. I'm just going to read a little bit of a blurb.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I want you to see this. Like, so you have Denny Allen, who has been haunted by visions of his own death since his parents were killed in a car crash. And then that was when he was 17. But now he's in his 30s and he's trapped in a dead-end warehouse job with a crumbling marriage. And he's got a teenage daughter that is a teenage daughter.
Yeah.
And his wife, Shannon, has this betrayal that happens. So you have like all these, you've brought in so much because you're showing us his warehouse job. You're showing us the marriage that's kind of crumbling a little.
Yeah.
The teenage, I mean, I have a teenager, so
as do I.
I get it. And if you have a teenager, we just say, they're a teenager.
Yeah.
But the fact that he, you do this dark side because now he's got these visions of his death and his parents died and there's unresolved trauma there. So that's where I'm saying, like, how do you create like just his character? Never mind, you get into his wife's, and then you get into Dora, who is another character that
it's
pops
like
up.
A free spirited,
Yeah, and it's like, okay, did you know he worked at a warehouse? Did you know his family was kind of crumbling?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I alluded to when I said there's more of me in my characters than I like to admit. I worked in a warehouse.
Okay.
So it was a very easy fit.
You write what you know.
And at the time when I started writing this, about 2015 or whatever, I was very much unhappy with that kind of part of my life. But that was also like a bit of a transition for me because my ex-wife and I made the decision for me to kind of quit my full-time job, go back to school, so I could go and pursue a teaching career. So it was this very weird kind of like liminal sort of space that I was excited and happy and whatever else, but I was also, deeply unsatisfied with a lot of stuff that was kind of going on.
Yeah.
So that was sort of the basis for that particular character. The whole like visions of death and things like that. Also something that I have talked about extensively in therapy because it was just this weird phenomenon that I felt since I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. And it's, you could be enjoying yourself at one moment and then the next moment you're like, wow, I could just like fall off of this thing and I'd be dead and everything would be done. And again, that was, and I looked at it as a way for me to sort of like process it and figure out like what the heck is going on.
Well, and for readers, like, when they're reading it, it's like, it's relatable because we all do go through the, oh my God, I'm going to, we're all going to die, Right. At the same time, it's like, you fear it and then it can overcome you with the anxiety.
Yeah, 100%.
So when it's doing that to him, it's like, okay, here he's, what is he? He's in his 30s now.
Yeah, he's about 36, 37.
And, at 17, his parents die. So he has this major trauma happen. Yeah. So, of course, just trying to deal with that. And then you have a neat way of bringing, like, some humor in, too.
Yeah,
What was that? How did you get that in there?
I don't know, man. I don't think I'm a very funny person, but because there are, like, things that are not like laugh out loud funny, but more of like, haha, that's hilarious. Like, how could that ever happen? That sort of thing. Yeah. Especially when it comes to teenagers and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And dealing with their
if we don't laugh at them, sometimes we're gonna just dwell on.
Or if you breathe the wrong way, or something like that.
In the car, do you have to breathe that loud?
Yeah, right. My daughter tells me all the time. She's like, "You're chewing so loud." I'm literally eating my dinner. Yeah. Like, what do you want from me? Maybe I could close my mouth a little more, sure. But it's like, okay, all right, whatever. But I mean, and plus, I don't think that I always try to keep my reader in mind too, where they're not like me, where I wouldn't mind reading this just incredibly dour story for 300 pages because I like that, but I know that the great many of people and like the large majority of people don't want that. You know what I mean? They don't want to they want to escape from their problems and things like that. And humor's a good way to kind of alleviate that a little bit. But it's also, I also wanted it to be messy. Because life is messy. You know what I mean? It's almost nothing goes according to plan. Yeah, and it is the kind of book that you get in and you're like taken out of your world and you're almost like, oh, I'm so glad someone else has a chaotic world. Right, yeah, exactly.
It's my life's not that bad, you know, and it does give you a little sense of humility going, all right, I guess I'll go back and deal with my world because I don't have to deal with that world.
Yep.
Wow. So this is the big book. You mentioned you started writing it in 2015.
Yeah.
So that was 11 years ago.
11 years ago. It took me about 5 years to write the first draft.
Okay.
And that was because I was, going
doing
to school,
multitasking,
working.
So did you set up an appointment with yourself or your muse to say I'm going to write, or you just whenever you found the time you just started?
Whenever I found the time I would do it, and admittedly. And I'm more comfortable talking about it now than I was certainly back then. But, I was an active alcoholic during that. And I kind of had it in my head that it's kind of romanticized, like, oh, Hemingway stood up and drank and typed and, oh, look at all his stuff. Like, so it worked for him. Why can't it work for me? So basically, whenever I had time at night, I would, pop open a beer and just whatever.
Nice.
And so it took me about 5 years to finish. And the thing that I always kind of like think about is when I started it, I was an active alcoholic, and by the time I finished it, I was like already 6 months sober.
Wow.
So and especially when you read the first draft, it's almost like you can see the shift. Yeah.
Wow.
Which is very weird as somebody who went through that and did it and wrote it and said, oh my God.
Can we see it in here, do you think?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Interesting.
But,
congratulations on getting sober.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it would be 6.5 years, about 7 years in October.
God bless you.
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
And that's a big thing to overcome,
Yeah.
And a lot of writers drink.
Yeah, because
just to deal with our muses or to deal with the calling and things like that. And I watched an episode, documentary on Steven Spielberg, and when he did Jaws, he had this one scene that he didn't want to write. Like, he didn't know how to do it. It was going to be a very dark scene. So he called a buddy of his who's an alcoholic and said, hey, can you write the scene? He goes, yeah, I can do it. So the guy literally boozed it up to write the scene.
Yeah.
And, he was like, all right. And sometimes you want to like say, okay, maybe how am I going to write this scene? I mean, I had at one point written like this rape scene for a story, and I'm like, I don't want to write this. I don't want to write this. No. And I'm fighting with the muse going, I don't want to write this, And they're like, you got it. This is part of the story. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, maybe I'll just take a little liquid courage. But I did it without the liquid courage.
Yeah, there you go. It's probably safer that way.
I wrote it, and then I burned it, and then I rewrote it.
Okay, there you go.
And I felt like
got it all out there.
Yeah, I had to get it out. Get it out. So, you have both are fictional stories, but, one is definitely dealing with something that's very realistic with the weight loss.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they're both realistic. But
sure.
Because some people in their lives do have this, the anxiety, the fear, I'm going to die, and waking up in the middle of the night with that fear, and then, dealing with the chaos of life and family and jobs and balancing. Did you plan that? Like, do you outline your book to say, okay, this is no?
Yeah, no, I don't normally outline. For both of them, I had an idea of where I wanted it to start and where I wanted it to end. But the middle is all pretty much like an organic process, and I like that about first draft, especially because that's when you really discover and you learn about those characters and. I feel like that's why I write. You know what I mean? Like that's why I want to figure out more about myself. Yeah.
And I love it because there's so many different processes to writing that some people be like, every day I'm up at 4:45 and I'm writing for an hour, or I'm doing an outline, or I'm just free flow writing. And it's like there's no one way, there's no wrong way. It's whatever is the right way for you, which is why I have the show, because I want to say, why do you write? Because if you tell me why you write, it might help why I'm writing or why, why they're writing, and just say, oh, well, Kyle just sat down and started writing. He didn't plan anything out.
Yeah.
And each of my books I've kind of done different ways. My last book I did have an outline for. The first book I binge wrote in 9.5 hours.
Yeah.
Boom.
That's a pretty serious commitment.
Yeah, and then my second book I used my baby journals and I wrote it and finished it in 2 weeks. This one took me 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's like there's all different processes, and for me I can't even say I have one process. For each book it has its own process. It's like giving birth or raising a child. You're not going to do everything exactly the same. They're all your babies, and you have to do that differently.
Yeah, but you learn from the previous experiences.
Oh, 100%. 100%. So how, can we talk a little bit about, we're going to go into the journaling, but even how you get exposure as an author, because we want people to buy our book, check out our babies, read them, fall in love with them, be like, oh, now I know why you labored so long.
Yeah. I'm still figuring that out, because I think we were talking about before we started, you got to be a bit of a narcissist when you're a writer, and that is, if anybody knows me, that is not me. I avoid talking about myself positively at all costs. I probably, to my own detriment, I talk about myself negatively all the time. But that's kind of I feel like that's sort of just my sort of coping mechanism that I haven't really shaken. But I just usually word of mouth is,
You're on social media.
Yeah, I'm on social media.
You go to book events and get tables and do that, library reads. I mean, which are all things that a lot of authors starting out don't realize that to get those, you just do them.
You just do it.
You just do it.
Yeah,
you can't wait for someone to say, "Oh, do you want to come join this?" Yeah. No, you got to call and say, "Can I come to the library and do this?" Or and you said, it's that narcissism is the wrong word, but you got to be outgoing.
Yeah,
and
you got to be
make those calls.
Full of yourself almost.
You have to be your own PR agent.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
Or. I had someone telling me how sometimes you're just a PR agent for your characters. It's listen, you got to meet Rachel. You got to read about Dora. Wait till you find out about Dora and all we have to fear.
Exactly.
Which, I don't know. The characters in there, I think, are so well developed.
Thank you.
That I, think that for writers to even read it, to understand how you've developed the characters will help them if they're looking to do that. And of course, if you're writing a memoir and you need to make it into fiction, that's always fun, because now you're going to take the real stuff and twist it around. Like you said, you worked in a warehouse. That is a little bit of the reality.
A little bit, yeah.
But there's other things in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
How often do you submit to literary journals? Because that's a good way of getting exposure as an author, for sure. Little teasers on either what you're writing or another topic.
Yeah, I'm working on my second novel, which I've also been working on for an extended period of time. Wildly different than the other too, which, I kind of just write about what I want to write about. That one is, I started it during COVID time, like when COVID started, and then really didn't start it until like after like the George Floyd murder and the riots and things like that. And I sort of asked myself, and understandably so, there was a lot of anti-white sentiments, what I mean, from people of color. And I empathized with that. But I also thought, what if, COVID did what everybody feared it was going to do and wiped out billions of people? And what would black folks do then? Would they restart a society and do it kind of in their own image? Or would they look at it as an opportunity of retribution? And I said, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? Retribution. So it follows a biracial woman who's Jewish and black who starts up a society in Sanibel Island in Florida, and she renames it New Bermuda, and she enslaves white men. And it's like basically all the roles have been reversed, right? Black folks and people of color are on top. Everyone else is on the bottom.
Interesting.
And that's been, and that's when I say, like, just because I'm a white male doesn't mean that I can't write about these things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm very conscious about what I'm saying and things like that, but I'm also like, look at this is what some people want. You know what I mean? So it's like,
well, and I can see where the influence came between like the George's attack and COVID and all of that. So it's like our outside influences. I mean, our society influences us. So do you think you're going to write like a short, like say 500-word essay submitted to a literary journal to get some feelers out there?
I've written some short stories, and actually I wrote one that I wanted to rewrite and then actually kind of like submit to like Plowshares and all those other magazines and things like that. But I let my wife read it, and she's like, it's not very good. I'm like, okay, well, listen, you're gonna kick me the real deal.
When you submit,
I'll go back to the drawing board.
Do you pay? Is there a fee? Sometimes there's a fee, but usually it's free. Yeah, there's a lot of
there's a lot of free ones. Empyrean magazine is a really good one to break into, because I think I read somewhere that I didn't realize this at the time because I thought it was great, but I submitted 3 poems to them a few years ago. All of them were accepted. 2 of them ended up in the printed version, and then another one ended up online. But I think they accept everybody. And some various either
so you're
for
a poet
the print
too. I didn't even know that.
I try, yeah. Sometimes I go back and forth. You know what I mean? I don't write nonfiction. I don't think my life's that.
No.
Yeah, I don't think that highly of myself where I'm gonna people have.
I just started doing a little bit of my memoirs. I wasn't comfortable doing it, and I've been taking a memoir class for over 10 years. But every time I go in, I'm writing a fictional memoir of someone else. Like worked on the Bean in My Breast story about cancer, and they're like, "Do you have cancer?" Because they're thinking it's my memoir, and I'm like,
"No,
not."
But I was sort of interested in if I were to write some sort of memoir, it would have to deal with my addiction and all that, and I feel like because that was not a linear. My recovery was not linear. You know what I mean? And because for a long time I didn't think I had a problem.
No, I think that
wasn't like other drunks.
Would be a helpful book, especially in a short novella for people who are, struggling or just getting through it to resonate with the story, as you know.
Yeah.
This has been great. I love this. So, can you tell people where they can find your books, where they can get more information about you?
Absolutely. Yeah. They are both available on Amazon. If you are a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, you can read it for free.
Nice.
Free in the sense that you pay monthly.
Yeah.
If you're local to the Western Mass area, a new chapter in West Springfield, which is a fantastic new bookstore. They have graciously lent some of their shelf space to the book. Or just if you catch me at an event, say hey, and I love talking shop. I don't really get to geek out about this stuff much.
That's what us writers, we want to geek out about how we're writing.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm like, I haven't even gotten into like what I love to read and all this other stuff, and it's like, because that's a huge part of it too. You got to be a pretty vociferous reader.
Sometimes I can't read when I'm writing, so I don't want it to influence what I'm doing at all. So
Well,
all right, so they can go to Amazon and your website.
Yeah, I don't have an official website yet, but Instagram at Kyle Palazzi writes. That's kind of my public page. I kind of like to keep my private life.
Yeah, we all try to be separate.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to separate all these worlds.
It is. Yeah, but we did do.
All right, well, I'll put the link for the Instagram on. I'm gonna put the links for your book. I thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks
it's been really great. You have good energy, and Just super congratulations on
Thank you.
everything you're doing.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I want to thank you, the studio. Wow, look at that. That was loud. Sorry. Want to thank you, the audience that, gets to come into this studio when I'm here to record and, just watch my Zoom episodes also. I appreciate that you're interested in all of these authors. I get a lot of local authors and, authors from around the world. And I hope you're going to go onto Amazon and there's websites, and especially Kyle's, buy the books, read the books, leave good reviews. That's the great part about, trying to get word of mouth out for all of the authors and all of our work. But if you're a writer and you're trying to do this, hey, tune into more episodes because you're going to find out how you can tell your story. All right. And, thanks for subscribing. And before we go, this is the time where I give you a little writer's prompt. And we talked today to Kyle Palazzi about characters and, just really developing their backstories. So, whether you're writing memoir or fiction or whatever, think about the character you're writing about. It might just be you. It might be your spouse. It might be your neighbor. Come up with some characteristics, and make them fictional if you want. Make them fun. Just sit for 10 minutes and actually write out like a little bio if you're going to introduce them at a show. Like, what's that character like? Do they work in a warehouse? Do they have a volatile marriage? Do they just get married? Do they have 6 kids? Are they pregnant? Things like that. It'll be fun. So have fun writing with your prompt today. I will see you on the next episode. Thanks for subscribing to yWrite, and I'll see you later.